Welcome to the Perfect Life Awakening Show, hosted by Royce Morales. Royce has been a transformational facilitator, teaching groundbreaking, spiritually based courses for more than 4 decades. She is the author of 3 books about her teachings. Join Royce as she takes you on a journey into how to live your best life and find your true purpose through discovering the origins of subconscious, disempowering notions and releasing them. She talks with experts and inspiring people just like you who learned to trust their intuitive inner wisdom, which led to life-changing shifts. Today, her guests live an empowered existence and are helping change the world to a higher consciousness place based on truth and love. You deserve to awaken to, align with, and embody your true self and live a life filled with love. Transform yourself from triggered to empowered and create your perfect life. Here is your host, Royce Morales.
Hi, welcome to my Perfect Life Awakening show. I am so delighted and so thrilled today to be able to chat with an amazing person that truly is attempting to transform the world from an attitude of hate and fear and violence to a place of love, which is only what we've been trying for, thousands of years. So you may have noticed, if you're following the news at all, you may have noticed that for the last few weeks, we are sitting at a front row seat to history. History is being made on a daily basis. It's just overwhelming. What a time to be here. It's terrifying and it's exciting and it's certainly a wake-up call, I think. I always talk about how the world is transforming, but it takes a lot of deep work to get there. So one of the things that I talk about in my program, the Perfect Life Awakening program, is the importance of, actually, I think it's the imperative nature of not only doing inner work, but taking it out there in some way. It's wonderful to resolve our triggering, all of the anger and fear that we feel, and coming from a higher self place, but we've got to take action with it. In fact, I find that if you don't take action with it, it's kind of like sitting on a mountaintop cross-legged, which is wonderful. That's great. But in these turbulent, tumultuous times, it's time to take action. It really is. So what does that mean? What does that look like? Can we actually function from love and take action? Can we resolve the fear and the divisiveness and the anger and all of that stuff and take empowered, heart-centered, as Dr. Paul says, heart-centered action? All I know is that if we're still raging internally at ourselves, we will be raging at our friends and neighbors and loved ones. If we're violent toward ourselves, we will be violent toward others. If we feel disconnected from ourselves, we will feel disconnected from others and not care about what we do to them. It's okay to kill them if I don't connect with them. So if we haven't healed ourselves, we cannot heal the world, bottom line. We have to have peace in our hearts, and then we can bring peace to the world. I always think about Mother Teresa and how she said, no, I don't go on anti-war marches. I go on peace marches. So there's a real difference there. So with that all in mind, with my wonderful, amazing co-host, Jacqueline Stratton, who is one of my longtime friends and students, we're going to chat with Dr. Paul Zeitz about all that he's doing. And just to let you know about him, he's a preventive medicine physician, an epidemiologist, author, award-winning champion of global justice and human rights. He's been on the front lines of a lot of movements, the AIDS movement, climate transformation, racial and gender equity, etc. And he's been doing this for 30 years. Just amazing. He is the author of a practical handbook called Revolutionary Optimism, 7 Steps for Living as a Love-Centered Activist. And I would recommend this book. I have not read it yet, full disclosure, but I'm going to. He talks about 7 steps for living as a love-centered activist. It's a step-by-step instead of just some theoretical whatever. And of course, his message is very timely right now because his goal is to create a new vision of peaceful transformation in the world. I just received his newsletter this morning, and I was telling him before we went on the air that it blew my mind. It really did, because what he is saying is a complete and total transformation from government on down or on up. I don't know. So welcome, Dr. Paul Zeitz. I'm so glad that you're here. And excuse me, I have allergies. I live in the mountains and I'm just a mess. So, so welcome, and welcome, Jacqueline. And Jackie is going to jump in and ask wonderful, intuitive questions as well. But let's just start by asking you, tell us more about how you got started in all this. What is the background? What inspired you to do this?
Yeah, thank you so much, Royce and Jacqueline. Honored to be here with you today and to share about sorry, my dog is barking. I'm going to go on mute. And
I've got one of those too. Don't worry. Whoops, we lost him.
Yeah, so,
there he is.
Oh, I was
horribly sorry about that. I just felt like I had to close the door or else. So a couple years ago, I decided it was time for me to provide a handbook. I realized that 2024 was going to be a crazy year, and it was going to be a difficult year. And so starting in 2022, I decided to really offer revolutionary optimism. And I offer it as a handbook. There's 7 steps, and each step is includes stories, some stories of other people, some of my own stories, some research and wisdom. But then there's RXs or prescriptions or practices, really, about how to live into these ideas and to start living as a love-centered activist on day one. So the first half of the book is really about self-liberation, about managing your triggers, very consistent with your teachings. And step 4, the heartbeat of the book, is about peace crafting. And it's about how we relate to each other. And then the last 3 steps are really about our collective liberation. And really, it's about that alchemy or the chemistry, like you were saying in the opening, about how do we go from our own liberation, our own living as our highest self, our own love-centered self, and how do we, what's the alchemy or the chemistry of translating that into action in the world? And I believe there is a critical mass of people who are already love-centered. And what we have is this moment of opportunity to step up and rise and transform our social, economic, and political system so that we can fulfill on our soul's yearning, our collective heart of a peaceful coexistence. And we're at a crossroads. Humanity is at a crossroads right now, and we have this opportunity right now to rise.
Yeah. So you say that all of us are yearning for this. Do we know that we're yearning for this? Because there's a lot of people that don't really see, like, what's going on in Israel and all the places of war. It seems like they're yearning to just kill everybody and get their territory and do terrible things. But I mean, I personally believe that there's a part of us that's yearning. But what about those others?
Yeah, no. Well, I start the book off with it's go time. Step 1 is it's go time. And it really introduces the idea of love-centered activism being available to literally everyone right now. And I want to ask everyone to take a breath. You're already there. You've already gotten to where you need to get to. You're already doing self-care. You're already taking care of your body and your mind and your soul. And you also are doing love-centered actions for people in your family life, your loved ones that you surround yourself with. And then many people are doing work in their community or with their spiritual organization. All those are love-centered actions. And then some people are doing work to affect the broader community of your state or our country or out in the world somehow. And so I just feel like it's an important thing to acknowledge that we already are love-centered activists, and we're already doing a lot, and we want to honor that and respect that all that is already happening, and that's a good place. Then, self-liberation is step 2, which is like managing your triggers, which you know all about. And for me, I talked about the inner dragon and how the inner dragon controls my mind, and I had to work to control my inner dragon and have peace summits in my mind so that I could live from my higher self. And what I see happening in the world, you talked about the wars going on. Really, these are a bunch of people who are not managing their triggers. It's like societal dragons are going after each other and slaughtering each other in a perpetual state of war and conflict. But I believe in their hearts and in their souls, they truly are love-centered people. They're just they haven't really gotten a handle on self-liberation and the opportunity that they have to, see each other as equal rather than as the other as an enemy. And I really have been championing a new concept of interdependence, and really living into what does it mean that we're interdependent? Like, we're not independent. It's a myth.
Yeah.
The truth is we're actually interdependent.
Yeah.
And why should we create our society to reflect that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Jackie said something interesting before we started. She said that, in fact, Jackie, why don't you share what you said about the female run world never had violence and war, but then something happened.
Yeah, I was going to preface that actually with where you went to with the war mentality around the world, which actually I think is not quite right. I think Paul has it right. I think that most people are heart-centered, but then you have these strong men, greedy, power-hungry people that get into these power play positions, and they maybe not only affect the way we think, some of us, but they also dominate our world and sort of design what's happening around us, like Netanyahu. So people are heart-centered, but they're in situations where it's not safe or it's not conducive to their life to be going against what the strong man's doing. And that ties into the ancient history of humans going back thousands of years, is that we were peaceful people. And I do a lot of priestess work and studies in women's studies and feminism and feminine power, but not in the way of like, we want it all, we want women to have all the rights, but rather in just honoring the feminine energy of Mother Earth, which everyone can do, whether you're a male or a female, right? Because Mother Earth has male and female aspects. Going back thousands of years, though, we were hunter-gatherer people, and we lived in unison with nature, and we lived in a sense of connecting with all the feminine aspects of nature and worshipped the woman figurines, the woman representation of feminine power. And it was like that up until we became agrarian and started to own land.
Yeah.
And that's when the first world wars were starting about 5,000 years ago in our timeline, which is such a short time ago.
Yeah.
And, it's not impossible for us to go back, which is what Dr. Zeitz was saying, to go back to where we once were, in response to my share about that.
Yeah.
Do you want to share a little bit more about that, Dr. Zeitz, about?
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think that history is relevant and important, and I do believe that humanity is at a crossroads now. Maybe it's been a 5,000-year cycle where we have been affected by what I call, it's a disease of the human psyche, and it's called caste. It's a caste concept, which means that one group of people has to assert power and control over another group of people.
Yeah.
And that is what has played out over many thousands of years, where we have lived through, I don't know if it's male, female, I don't know all the history. So I feel like the disease can happen in men and women. Women can also be perpetrators of caste, but it is predominantly male driven. I agree with that. And we're living now in a time where our Constitution, for example, was a government, a document written by white male, 56 white males who were oligarchs, and 41 of them were slave owners. And the constitutional order that we are under now, 2 years later, is a caste system. And it's designed to protect the wealthy elite and to oppress women and people of color. And the majority of white people as well are also oppressed under the system. And I think it's obviously not working. If you look at what's going on in the world, and when you look at the violence on our streets, the gun violence, the $1 trillion annual military budget that we pay for out of our tax dollars, the 750 military bases, the wars that are raging and expanding every day in the headlines. The climate emergency is another example of the oppression systems, just extracting and burning fossil fuels and pumping 1 trillion tons of CO2 pollution up into the atmosphere. That's creating hothouse Earth. And sadly, this is going to be the coolest summer of our lives. It's really hot over here on the East Coast, but it's really, I keep telling everyone, sadly, we should appreciate this as the coolest summer that we're ever going to experience. So we yet at the same moment of peril that we're in, because we've let these systems go unchecked for so long, we do have this opportunity for healing and transformation. And that's what I'm hoping Revolutionary Optimism is a handbook that people can use. They can do it in groups and in spiritual groups and community groups, even in family groups or friend groups, to deepen friendships, build social cohesion, build community cohesion. It's hard work. And so I got this journal and workbook to go along with it, where you can, take notes and really explore these issues and these opportunities. And then there's guiding questions for groups as well, so that we can really learn how to build friendships, really deep friendships, about how we want to survive and be resilient during these tough times.
Yeah. I wanted to sort of go back to how you started that share, which was about the Constitution. And many of those early men that were putting together the government in those early days were actually interacting with the Native American peoples on the East Coast, the Algonquian Indians, which are made up of several tribes. That's their sort of overreaching name of several tribes, but they were learning from them. And there's some cool videos on YouTube you can check out to show how some of those early people, George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, were interacting with the Native Americans to learn from them and how they put government together. And of course, Native American and indigenous peoples all around the planet at times were warring with each other for territory. So it wasn't out of complete peacefulness that they were creating their forms of government, but they had a very strong sense of diplomacy and recognition of all peoples in the group, like you were just describing, and a sense of connection to nature and connection to the earth itself, because we are interrelated, as you were saying earlier, Dr. Zeitz, that we are all interconnected. There is no separation. The air that we are breathing right now around us is part of us. This chair I'm sitting on, all the stuff around us is all transcending us into understanding of being completely connected to everything. So it's so important for us to remember that we are totally connected. There is no disconnection here. We are just afraid, as Royce's teaching sometimes talks about, that we're just afraid of being in love with each other because it's scary to be loving. And so your book, your wonderful book there that you're displaying, can along with Rose's teachings, help us to move to this idea of how do we get past the button pushes so that we can live in harmony together.
Mm.
I keep thinking about what you said a few minutes ago, Jackie, about shifting from agrarian, or shifting from this is just fine that we're living here and it's, hunter-gatherer, turning into agrarian. I keep thinking, I know I'm a realist a lot. Even though I'm a spiritual teacher, I'm very grounded in reality. And I keep thinking, well, how would I feel if somebody came to my door and said, this is my house, I'm taking it? I don't know how I would deal with that. And I understand that when things like that happen, people go to war because this is mine. How do we get past that, since we're not a hunter-gatherer world anymore? We do have possessions, we do have homes and territory. How do we get past that to the point where we can say, oh, okay, well, you can move in here for a while. I'll share my home with you. That's fine. Do you know what I'm saying? It's like, how do we get there in reality?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's a lot of interesting work happening around the world in an area called reparative justice. And that is like a zone where we acknowledge that there were historical wrongs done, under caste systems where one group of people oppressed another group of people. South Africa is probably the most famous one, where they had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And that small picture over there is Archbishop Desmond Tutu, who I had the honor of working with for many years on global AIDS. And he headed up the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. And it was a space that was created to allow victims and perpetrators to speak their truth and to air the wounds and to have some actual healing. It also is usually married with reparations, some form of restitution to repair the damage. Unfortunately, that did not happen in South Africa. They never got to that part of the puzzle. And so there's still a lot of civil conflict going on. But there's been like 40 or 50 truth and reconciliation commissions all over the world that have really done great work to heal some of those historic wounds. We've never done that in the United States, actually. We've never had a Truth and Reconciliation Commission for the crime of slavery or the crime of the Jim Crow law era, or even right now, the crime of mass incarceration that we're implementing right now. And so after George Floyd was murdered in 2020, Congresswoman Barbara Lee from Northern California, from the Berkeley area, Oakland area, she actually introduced for the first time ever a bill in Congress calling for a Truth, Racial Healing, and Transformation Commission. So I was part of a movement of people, a Black-led movement, and I was a white ally who really championed this bill. Now there are truth commissions all over the country. There are reparations commissions. The state of California had a reparations study commission. Some cities are starting to do reparations. That's the path that I believe can lead to authentic healing and repair of the wounds that we've implemented, that our government has implemented against other people. Yeah. And we need to scale that up and expand it rapidly. Also, women have been oppressed. Women got the vote 104 years ago, and still to this day, 104 years later, I would say that women's voices are not equal, and they're not counted, and they're not heard in our political process or in our political systems, and that is wrong. And we can fix that if we choose.
I wanted to respond to the restorative justice and the reparations that you just shared about, because there's a little bit of especially with the reparations, there's a little bit of confusion there about what exactly that means. And just to go back a little bit, also the Native Americans need to be heavily included in that, and children and elderly people. So there's a whole system of people that are not included in some of these important goings back of fixing things. And in particular, the reparations. Sometimes people with certain political mindsets or understandings will say reparations means paying money. And that's not what reparations means. Just for everyone to be clear, Dr. Zeitz explained it beautifully. It means to repair. So repairing means to do a spider web of ideas, not just paying, oh, your family lost their land on the East Coast 400 years ago, so we're going to pay you for that. No, that's not what that means. What it actually means is giving people accurate historical accounts of what's happened, sharing historical traumas and experiences that those peoples went through, giving people free access that are having the things repaired to them, giving people free access to college, giving people free access to health care or mental health care, giving people like parent education classes. I'm a teacher, so it's really important to do restorative justice in education, giving children tools to help them navigate the world, which is a tricky place. Doing a lot of things like you were just talking about with Desmond Tutu, doing community-based groups where you can discuss these things and also do fun stuff and repair by being together in joy, right? By being together in happiness and healing, by being positive. And there's so many more things than just paying money to people that we can do to repair the history of humanity recently and in long times ago, that we really need to remember to use that word repair properly and not just limit it to a monetary sensation.
Well said. I totally agree.
Yes. Yeah, that's a good point, because I think people do hear it as, oh, we'll just give them some money.
Yeah, it's not that at all. It's so much deeper than that. And we really need to remember how many. I just came up with a few. You two could probably come up with a lot more ways that we could heal and restore our interconnections together in our traumatic history that we've created.
Yeah. Well, we need to take a bit of a break, and hopefully you can talk about that when we come back, Dr. Paul Zeitz, and we are talking about heart-centered activism. We will be right back.
Home Times TV. Do you crave joy but feel stuck? Do you go through life feeling constantly triggered and frustrated? Fear is likely the culprit, and subconscious fear is likely sabotaging you. Perfect Life Awakening is a time-tested, spiritually based approach to inner transformation created by Royce Morales. For over 40 years, she has helped people get to the origins of subconscious fears and ultimately help them find their true purpose and a life full of joy. Sign up for Perfect Life Awakening today at roycemorales.com. You deserve to go from triggered to empowered, shifting your life with Perfect Life Awakening. Imagine becoming a super influencer. Reinvent yourself, invest in your brand, and then manifest your success with a robust spheric approach. Om Times Media and Broadcasting offers a unique and multifaceted way to become the spiritual and conscious influencer you deserve to be by putting your message across our powerful platform with its proven record of integrity and excellence. Through our produced shows, Om Times offers the opportunity to become a social media TV personality, a radio show host, an Om Times magazine columnist, and a syndicated podcaster, all in one shot. By live streaming your show on Om Times TV and broadcasting it across the extensive Om Times radio and TV networks, you become more than a host. You become an ambassador and a force for positive change. Om Times. Open yourself to the possibilities.
I want to eat. apples and bananas. Why can't I eat apples and bananas?
Support the Feeding America nationwide network of food banks to help provide meals to those in need. Join us at feedingamerica.org.
Welcome back. We are talking with Dr. Paul Zeitz, and we're talking about heart-centered, love-centered activism. What a challenge. It really is. I'm just thinking about all the stuff that we were saying and how, I think people are excited right now with all the changes going on, but I also think that we're kind of working against people's apathy and hopelessness a lot. Give us 7 steps to becoming a love-centered activist. Can you kind of go through those to maybe inspire people to take some actions?
Yes, thank you so much. So the first step in revolutionary optimism is it's go time, which I talked about earlier, about acknowledging that we already are love-centered activists, and then waking up and then asking a simple question: how can I serve? And then choosing how you're serving, whether you're doing self-love, self-care. And that's an important through line through the book, that self-care is the number one priority.
Yes.
And or serving your family or serving your community or the world. And I offer a practice about imagining future generations. So I ask you to imagine someone younger than you sometime in the future. So I do this with my 2-year-old granddaughter, and I imagine her in 2100 when she's around 80. And I imagine her looking back at us and thanking us, all, not me, but all of us really, for all that we've done to make the world a better place, to make the world survivable and livable for her up in 2100. And that inspires me every day.
Yes.
Yeah, that gets me going. like I can't be stuck in my hopelessness and despair, because I need to do whatever I can for my granddaughter, Birdie Lou. Then step 2 is really I think the core of your work around self-liberation, about finding your life purpose, or I call it your soul's deployment, like what you feel called to do. And also recognize that that's an ongoing exploration. Even me, I'm still trying to figure that out. And I shapeshift and I evolve over time, and I add on new tracks of activity to continue to live into my soul's purpose. I also talk about the inner dragon and how to understand how the brain operates, how the neuroanatomy operates, and how we can actually choose to live from our highest self, our love-centered self, our interconnected self perspective, which is in our brains, but it sometimes gets hidden. The third step is called accessing unified consciousness. And this is a really important step that I feel like is about making sure that people understand that we can access the sense of unity consciousness or collective consciousness. And that we've all had a taste of it, at the birth of a child or at a funeral. We feel like this sense of interconnectedness. Or sometimes on a hike in nature, we feel like the awesomeness of the beauty of God's creation. We see that and we connect to it, and we lift ourselves out of our own little world. And so what I share in the book is about how you can access unified consciousness and then build your muscles, like go to the gym and really learn how to deploy it, and then deploy it when you need it. And so there are times as a revolutionary optimist where I'm in a stressful situation or I'm being challenged, and I can call into that vertical access, if you will. And then I can calm myself down and maintain myself as my highest presence. And then the fourth step 4 is peace crafting, which is really a fun part of the book. It's the heartbeat of the book. It's really about how I'm relating to each of you, Royce and Jacqueline here on the studio, and then of course all your listeners and viewers, and then of course any interaction that I'm having with my wife, my children, or any work environment. And it's like a wheel, an imaginary wheel that I've implanted in my head. It's an imaginary implant to remind myself to be peacecrafting. So being a listening friend, embracing multiple perspectives, using love speech, so only love speech comes out of my mouth, counter shaming, not shaming speech. Then lastly, building trust. And I can go through all that in more detail, but that 4-part wheel reminds me to always be peacecrafting when I'm interacting with others. Then the next part of the book, step 5, is called Imagineering. And it's about unlocking our radical imagination, our visions, our political imagination. I used to think I was the only one that wanted to transform the world, but it turns out I'm not alone. A lot of people have these big ideas, and we're afraid to share them because we've been shamed. It's called exuberance shaming. We get shamed into silence. Like we have to go along to get along. That's the oppression systems that are operating in our minds and in our culture that try to shut down these ideas of Imagineering and radical imagination. Because we can fix all this, we can transform all this. And then the book goes into not just having the imagination, but then building love-centered movements. And I get really practical now about the 10 steps, 10 best practices for love-centered movements. Again, the theme is that we're not in this alone. We're in this together. And it's important not to try to take on all this by oneself, but recognizing that we're part of a collection of humanity that wants to also aspire towards this transformation. Step 6 is sparking peaceful revolutions. You know, there is evolutionary change that's happening all the time throughout these 5,000 years or 200,000 years that humanity's been around. And there are periods of time where revolutionary leaps forward can happen. And I believe we're in that right now.
Yes.
We're in a revolutionary moment of possibility. Some spiritual Christian leaders, a mentor of mine, Reverend Adam Taylor, calls it a Kairosian moment of possibility where everything can transform. And I am offering in step 6 really an updated version of Reverend Martin Luther King's teachings about nonviolent direct action, peaceful resistance, non-cooperation with the systems of oppression. And I offer really practical ways that everyone can support that. Not everyone has to go out on the street and be getting arrested or doing public actions like that. I do that kind of stuff, but it's not for everyone. And but everyone can do something, even from your home or your office or wherever you're at. You can be part of supporting that peaceful resistance. And lastly, step 7 is about unifying. It's about unifying within, like unifying your soul's purpose with how you create your life. Because for me, I had decades where I understood what my purpose was at some level, but I wasn't living my life that way. So I had to make choices to do that. And then also unifying collectively, like interpartisan, intergenerational, interracial, intergender, international, like thinking about everything from an interdependence lens and imagining how we can create the world that way and then starting to do it and taking action towards interdependence. And that's really how the book wraps up with an invitation really for all of us to rise at this critical time in our history.
That's amazing.
That's amazing.
Yeah, really amazing. Beautiful.
Yeah. So tell us what I was mentioning earlier about the newsletter I got from you today. Tell us about is it Unity or Unify?
So I'm a revolutionary optimist, right? So this book is working on me. I walk around with it. It's like a handbook. And it's like forced me to stretch and grow and to evolve and to be a better listener and to really like not think it's my way or the highway. Actually, it's not that at all. It's like me listening is actually the most important thing. So I've initiated something called Unified Movements, which is #Unified Movements, which is a movement building platform, again, because we're not in this alone. And there are so many things already happening. I wanted to offer pathways of engagement for people that care about the women's issues or the climate emergency or racial justice. If you go on the website, there's all these different movements that you can already engage in. And then we've also created a new movement. I launched it publicly in July of 2024 called #UnifyUSA, which is really focusing at the root cause of the problems here, in my view, which is constitutional renewal and transformation. And so we have been working to advocate for and to build a movement around a new form of government that is centered on interdependence rather than independence.
Yeah.
And so we had a breakthrough in Milwaukee just a couple of weeks ago. There was a people's first convention held, and there was an interpartisan gathering of stakeholders. And we launched the Declaration of Interdependence, which
Wow.
has a set of principles that we're exploring now. And we're aiming for US 3.0. Like we had the Articles of Confederation, US 1.0. We have the US Constitution, which is now US 2.0. And I believe that we need US 3.0, which could operate under an interdependence covenant, which would create a new relationship between each of us, between us and all life, and of course, us and our earth, where we could be in a love-centered relationship rather than an extraction-based relationship or an oppression-based relationship. So this is a big lift. It's not easy, but I do believe that it's possible. And I do believe that we need a critical mass of people that are say, hey, maybe we could do something different here, building on what we have now.
Yeah. Wow.
And after I just skimmed it during the break, and it's just amazing what you put on there.
Yes.
I was particularly taken by, again, it reminded me of the Native American indigenous politics and government, the way they used to and still do live out their interactions where all are represented.
Right.
And I just want a little side note about that Native American populations across the Americas, North and South America, are still alive and vibrant, although many were harmed and traumatically treated, over the last several hundred years. We still have many vibrant nations alive and well. And so tapping in, I keep sensing a little bits of that as I'm hearing you, this indigenous people's view of life that has been going on for thousands of years. Yeah. And you're really touching on that. And just one quick thing, because I want you to comment on that. I love your idea of the Triune Presidency, which I 100% have thought of decades ago. I was like, why do we just have one president? When I was a teenager in the 80s, I thought we should have a woman, a man, and, some other diverse representation. And it's just so exciting to read your ideas, Dr. Zeitz.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm in.
Okay, great. Well, it's all hands on deck, so great.
Yeah.
We need you, and we need everyone. Yeah, so we are drawing on collective wisdom, including indigenous wisdom. And at the signing ceremony that we had in Milwaukee just a couple of weeks ago, we actually, as I said, the Declaration of Independence from 1776 was 51 white male oligarchs, 41 were slave owners. So this time we did it the complete opposite. We started with indigenous leaders who were present in the room. They signed first, then black and brown people signed, then white people signed. And it's open for everyone to sign. It's not limited. It's an open signing opportunity. And so the relationship with each other and with Earth really does draw on ancient wisdom and indigenous wisdom. So thank you for acknowledging that. I appreciate that. And it's really central to our healing, I believe.
It's really central to our
healing. And we want to unlock political imagination. So we're talking about, in the Declaration, we talked about a fourth branch of government, a people's assembly. And there are models of this happening in Europe and Belgium and other parts of the world where the people, regular people, become part of the government and through a lottery sortition system. And they create the laws and they create the feedback on what's working and what's not working based on what's happening at local level. And then, we wanted to transform all branches of government for the future. And it's too much for one person. So to be an expert and be able to manage all this stuff. And we also thought it was important to have a check and balance on the executive, like internally within the executive. And so we are proposing a triune presidency. You do need swift decision making in matters of urgency and matters of crisis, like national security. So we didn't want to have it be like a huge council of people, although we did consider that. So we are proposing a triune presidency with that would be, representative of the people rather than just all white men, or rather all men as an example. Yeah. So that's another big idea that we're putting forward now. So I'm glad that you see, like, that's a perfect example. You had that idea a lot of years ago.
Yeah.
So this is the whole point of revolutionary optimism is like, let's have all your big ideas now. Let them out, bring them forward. Let's unleash that.
Yes. Yeah. And in terms of education, education is a real mixed up part of our nation and the world, maybe, but it goes right along with what you're describing, and really the transformation of our educational systems in the United States would benefit greatly, not only from your government proposal of how to sort of shift the leadership layout, but also how to change education so that we're not sitting at desks all day and teachers are managing misbehaviors, because it's gotten really bad in the last 10 years, 20 years with the changes of kids being exposed to so much screens and COVID, and families are overwhelmed. It's hard. Families need more support. And so how can we plug into this idea that you've come up with? How can we support families more and people in general? How can we support parents more? Parenting is hard. It's really hard. You don't always know what to do. And if we could transform education and bring in some of these ideas that you're talking about, and get children and teenagers, who are the most amazing people on the planet. They're the most rebellious, energized people on the planet. How can we help them to use their amazingness to help transform our world into total love? That's what education should be. And rather, what we're doing is we're keeping people stuck with grading and all these kind of similar offshoots of government, and it's not working. And it's one of the reasons why our nation is going through a lot of shifts right now, and the medical field as well, which I'm sure you know about, Dr. Zeitz. But education, the medical field, and other similar parts of our nation are really collapsing right now, so that we can recreate them through love.
Yeah. So we are like-minded, like-hearted.
Yes.
So the Declaration of Interdependence, which is on unifiedmovements.org website and available for everyone to sign, we have a preamble, which, I think you would resonate with. I'll just read the first part of it. It says, "We, the people of the United States of America, declare that we are interdependent on each other, with all of humanity, with all life, and with our earth." That's the first kind of statement. And then when we get into it, there are 10 principles, and we have a whole principle on education and citizenship, Principle 7, which focuses on committing to ensuring lifelong education is the cornerstone of our democracy and an informed population, promoting interdependence, beloved community, empowerment, and civic responsibility as part of our education system. And on health and well-being, we, like, our whole system, I'm sure you know this, is focused on curative care. And we have Principle 4 articulated as well-being and healthcare as a human right, to get that, both sides of that. We want to have human well-being be the goal, rather than, treating a disease at the end of the day, or at the end of its course. So we need a whole revamp of how our entire healthcare system is structured and organized and incentivized. It's all driven by money incentives for pharmaceutical companies, technical companies, technology companies that are building all this innovation. Now, I want all that. when I'm old and sick and I need the best healthcare. So I'm not saying not to do that, but I think there's this whole other thing like you're talking about, which is well-being and flourishing from birth, till death. That there's a different way that we could be investing in mental health and meditation and chanting and yoga and all the other practices that help people stay centered and balanced, rather than being addicted to our technology.
Yeah.
What else is on that list? I'm dying to hear it. You've inspired me to want to hear all of it.
Well, I think that a really good one is around Principle 3, economic equity and universal basic income. We commit to a new economic order for peace, neo-peace, using regenerative, circular, and entrepreneurship economic policies.
Yes.
We commit to minimizing economic disparities by ensuring financial security for all as a human right. We commit to economic fairness as it is essential to rebuilding trust and creating prosperity in our society. So our whole economic system is about supporting the super rich to get richer, and the rest of us getting by on fewer and fewer resources. And with the advent of technology like AI and the information and communication and transportation technologies, many jobs are becoming obsolete. And so I think there is this push towards what's called UBI, Universal Basic Income, and finding ways to let everyone have some resources, enough resources to be able to flourish and be able to be living a peaceful life, and contributing to their own well-being and their family's well-being. The climate and environment is a whole big area that I'm focused on, a whole new relationship called climate and environmental transformation, and on it goes. So, and of course, global peace and global interdependence is a big part of it. And so we're now working with international stakeholders on a global interdependence declaration. We can't figure out what interdependence is for us in the United States without understanding what it would mean for others to be living in an interdependent framework.
Right.
But I've talked to people this week, even in the UK and in Africa and other parts of the world, and people are like, whoa, we all need this.
Yeah.
And it's true, we do, because the caste systems that I described that have created this economic oppression and this the way that the world is organized right now, that it's global in nature.
Yes.
And the healing of caste and the healing of these systems and the transformation of these systems to love-centered systems, it can start here or could start somewhere, but it is actually a global opportunity in my view.
Yeah. And it's really important to remember that we can take the interdependence down to the microcosm, which is ourselves, the self-care, right? Self-care first, take care of yourself, then you can take care of your children, your partner, your family, your home, and then going out to the macrocosm, which is, in my case, as a teacher, going into the school situation and creating heart-based communications and systems within the school itself, which is not happening. And, and in the medical field and in whatever, that we can generate the beginnings of what you're describing by starting with ourselves and moving out to the world.
Yes. Wow. Well, how do people get in touch with you? How do people sign on to your Unify movement?
Unify movement. Yeah, so you can find me at drpaulzeitz.org. You can order the book Revolutionary Optimism and the journal and workbook on Amazon or on bookshop.org, which is a independent bookstore pathway. And unifiedmovements.org is the website about those that want to get involved in advocacy, campaigning, and movement building.
I hope you can get those books into schools.
Oh, yeah.
If you can help me do that, I'm happy to support having that happen.
Yeah, we need to write a grant to get that as part of a general curriculum across every school in the nation or the world, really.
Well, Yay. Thank you for what you're doing. Just keep up the good work. Stay on that purposeful, loving, heart-centered path. It's going to happen. It really is. And everybody deserves to have that. We all on this planet deserve to come from a heart-centered place because that is who we are. Yes. Yes. And I will see everybody next week. And just to remind everyone that you can find me at perfectlifeawakening.com. I'm going to be adding 2 more shows to my repertoire here. And the other shows are going to be all about my teaching. So I'm really excited to do that. And Jacqueline's going to help with that. So I will see you all next week. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Zeitz.
Thank you, Royce and Jacqueline. Great
Thank
to
you.
May you have a heart-filled